Most men dream of greatness, yet wake to mediocrity. They suffer, they struggle, and they obey, never knowing why they fail. Today, I will reveal the harsh truths few dare to accept. Truths that, if mastered, could lift you above the herd. For this is not about comfort. It is about power, survival, and victory. I speak as Machiavelli once did, not to flatter you with illusions, but to expose the cruel reality of human weakness. If you are searching for pity, you will find none here. But if you seek power, the kind that bends fortune to your will, then listen carefully, for the masses are condemned to fail, but you need not be among them. Why most people fail. Machiavelli. Most men dream of greatness, yet most wake to mediocrity. They suffer in silence, they struggle without purpose, and they obey without question. The question is not why fortune denies them success, but why they deny themselves the strength to claim it. You see, failure is not an accident. It is the natural reward for weakness, hesitation, and blindness in a world that only respects power. Today, I will reveal why most people fail, not to comfort you, but to arm you with truths that cut like steel. For those who cannot accept them are destined to remain among the crowd, powerless and forgotten. The good suffer because they mistake virtue for strength. They believe that kindness will shield them, that honesty will be rewarded, and that patience will eventually bring justice. Yet the world is not ruled by saints, but by wolves who feast on lambs timid to fight. If you are good but not strong, if you are honest but not cunning, you will suffer at the hands of those who recognize no law but ambition. To survive, one must learn to wear both faces, the fox, sly and alert, to see the traps laid by others, and the lion, fierce and bold, to crush those who dare oppose you. Goodness without strength is not a shield. It is an invitation for others to exploit you. And so the good, unguarded and naive, endure more pain than the ruthless ever will. Most people remain average because comfort is their prison. They cling to security as though it were life itself. They fear risk, they avoid struggle, and they despise change, even as they complain about their stagnation. The average man works only to preserve what little he has, never to gain what he desires. He tells himself he is cautious, but in truth, he is enslaved by fear. To rise, one must embrace risk, for power and greatness are found not in the safety of the known, but in the chaos of the unknown. The crowd seeks stability, but stability is merely another word for slow decay. Those who stay average do so by choice, for they choose safety over significance, and in doing so, they sentence themselves to obscurity. Why do most never succeed? Because success requires discipline, vision, and a relentless hunger that the masses cannot summon. They wait for opportunity to fall into their hands rather than creating it. They complain of fate, curse fortune, and envy those who rise above them, never realizing that they are the architects of their own defeat. Fortune, as I have written, is a woman, and she favors those bold enough to seize her with force, not those who wait politely for her to choose them. Success belongs to the daring, the calculating, the ruthless in their pursuit of purpose. The masses fail because they believe effort alone is enough, when in truth, effort without strategy is wasted energy. They labor without vision, they follow without question, and they live without a plan. And so they fail not by fate, but by choice, because they lack the will to impose their desires upon the world. Weakness is the final and most damning reason why most people fail. Weakness is not merely the lack of strength. It is dependence, fear, and the desperate need for approval. A man who cannot stand alone must bow to those who can. He trades freedom for comfort, power for acceptance, and sovereignty for security. Weakness makes him predictable, and predictability makes him easy to control. To gain power, one must cultivate the art of duality, appearing virtuous when it serves your purpose, yet acting with cold calculation when necessity demands it. The powerful understand that morality is a mask, useful when worn, discarded when inconvenient. The weak believe morality is a cage they must never escape, and so they remain trapped, obedient, and powerless, while the strong rise above them, commanding respect not through virtue, but through fear, strategy, and control. This is why most people fail. They suffer because they are too good without power. They remain average because they fear risk. They never succeed because they lack vision, and they stay weak because they depend on others for strength. The world belongs not to the many, but to the few who dare to seize it. Why good people suffer, why good people suffer. This is one of the most uncomfortable truths that the world hides from you. but one that every man and woman must confront if they wish to rise above mediocrity. You have been told since childhood that being good is enough, that kindness brings rewards, that honesty is the best policy, and that patience will eventually lead you to your desires. Yet when you look around you, what do you see? You see good men struggling to feed their families, while liars and cheats climb to power. You see kind souls abandoned, betrayed, and broken, while the ruthless stand tall. You see honest workers toiling endlessly, barely surviving, while the cunning exploit them for gain. The truth is merciless, but it must be spoken. Goodness without strength is a recipe for suffering. The good suffer because they live in a fantasy, believing the world operates by the rules they were taught. They imagine life is governed by fairness, that virtue will be recognized, that justice will always prevail. But life is not fair. Recognition does not come without force, and justice belongs to whoever has the power to impose it. When a lamb walks among wolves, do you expect the wolves to praise its innocence? No, they devour it, because that is the law of nature. The world is not a sanctuary for purity. It is an arena where only those who balance virtue with strength can endure. Consider the man who prides himself on honesty. He tells the truth in all matters, and for this he believes people will admire him. But what actually happens? His enemies learn his weaknesses. They discover his plans. They exploit his openness and turn it against him. Honesty without strategy is not nobility, it is exposure. It is the equivalent of walking into battle without armor, believing your sincerity will deflect arrows. The good suffer because they mistake their transparency for courage, when in reality, it is often the very thing that destroys them. Or think of the woman who devotes herself to kindness, who gives without limit, who forgives endlessly, who sacrifices again and again. Does the world reward her generosity? No. The selfish take advantage, the ungrateful consume her energy, and the ruthless see her as a tool to be used until she collapses. Her kindness becomes her weakness, because she had not learned the art of balance, the art of saying no, the art of protecting her strength. To be kind without boundaries is to invite endless suffering. Machiavelli once said that a ruler must learn how not to be good, and that statement shocks those who cling to illusions. But what did he mean? He meant that goodness, when used without discretion, leads to ruin. To survive and to rise, one must know when to be kind and when to be cruel, when to speak the truth and when to conceal it, when to show mercy and when to strike. The good suffer because they refuse to play this game, even though the game is being played against them every single day. Look closely at history and you will see it again and again. The naive king who trusted his rivals ended up betrayed. The honorable general who underestimated the deceit of his enemies ended up defeated. The generous leader who gave everything to the people ended up abandoned, despised when he had nothing left to offer. Good intentions without power become a death sentence. People do not follow the weak out of love. They use them until they are empty and then discard them. The fox and the lion, that is the lesson. To survive, one must be both the fox to detect traps, to maneuver through deceit, to know when words must be twisted to your advantage. The lion to display strength, to crush opposition, to inspire fear in those who would dare test you. The good suffer because they insist on being only one thing. They choose to be lambs. In a world of wolves, they believe their purity alone will protect them, but protection without power is a lie. You see, suffering for the good is not accidental. It is inevitable when virtue is not armed with strategy. People admire good men, but they do not follow them. People sympathize with kind souls, but they do not obey them. People respect honesty in theory, but in practice they exploit it. The truth is that being good in itself is not enough. Without the cunning of the fox and the strength of the lion, goodness becomes fragility. And fragility, in this world, does not survive for long. Why most people stay average? Why most people stay average? This is the great secret no one wants to hear. Because mediocrity is the natural state of the many. The masses cling to it as if it were safety, when in truth it is a slow and quiet death. From childhood, people are trained to accept the average as the goal of life. Go to school, get a job, follow the rules, avoid mistakes, and you will live comfortably. Yet comfort is the very poison that keeps them chained to mediocrity. It promises security, but it robs them of greatness. It shields them from danger, but it also shields them from glory. Most people stay average because they fear risk more than they desire power. The average man avoids discomfort at all costs. He would rather suffer quietly in boredom than endure the sharp sting of failure. He convinces himself that stability is victory, that a predictable life is a good life, that avoiding pain is the same as gaining happiness. But listen closely. Stability is not victory, it is surrender. Predictability is not happiness, it is numbness. And avoiding pain is not wisdom, it is cowardice disguised as caution. The truth is simple. Most people stay average because they choose safety, and in choosing safety, they choose invisibility. Think about the man who works the same job for 20 years, never demanding more, never reaching for greater heights. He convinces himself that loyalty will be rewarded, that patience will bring promotion, that his time will come, but his time never comes. He waits and waits while others climb above him, those willing to demand, to risk, to move. He mistakes stagnation for loyalty, when in truth it is only fear. Fear of change, fear of uncertainty, fear of rejection. And so he stays average, not because he lacks ability, but because he lacks the courage to disrupt his own comfort. The same is true in ambition. Most people dream of success, but only within the safe boundaries of their imagination. They fantasize about wealth, power, respect, but the moment they face the cost, the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the public failures, they retreat into the arms of mediocrity. They want the rewards of greatness without the trials that forge it. They want the crown without the blood, the throne without the struggle, the recognition without the battle. And so they remain average, content to imagine a life they will never truly claim. Machiavelli understood this truth well. He wrote that fortune favors the bold, but the average man despises boldness. He calls it arrogance, recklessness, foolishness, anything to excuse his own inaction. He does not see that the world belongs to those willing to seize it. The masses wait for opportunity to knock, as though opportunity were a polite guest. But opportunity does not knock, it must be taken, it must be stolen, it must be forced open like a door that resists. The average man will never do this because he prefers to wait in the hallway, telling himself that someday the door will open by itself. Even when faced with chances, most people hesitate. They ask, what if I fail? What if I lose everything? What if it doesn't work out? They drown themselves in doubts until the chance disappears, and then they sigh in relief, saying, it wasn't meant to be. This is how mediocrity survives. It whispers to you that failure is too dangerous, when in reality, failure is the only teacher that sharpens the strong. Those who rise above average embrace failure as a weapon, while those who stay average fear it as a curse. Look at society as a whole, and you will see how deeply mediocrity has been normalized. Schools reward obedience, not originality. Jobs reward predictability, not innovation. Families reward safety, not ambition. The entire system is designed to produce average citizens who follow rules, pay taxes, consume products, and die without leaving a trace. And most people willingly accept this path because it is easier to follow the script than to write a new one. To break free from this requires rebellion. Not rebellion of words, but the rebellion of action, the willingness to go where others will not. The crowd despises those who rise too high above them because such people remind them of their own cowardice. They whisper, he is lucky, she is arrogant. They must have cheated. These are the excuses of the average because to admit the truth, that greatness requires sacrifice they were unwilling to make would shatter the illusions that protect their fragile comfort. It is easier to sneer at the bold than to become bold. It is easier to hate the successful than to face the shame of remaining ordinary. Most people stay average because average is safe. It does not demand courage. It does not demand suffering. It does not demand vision. But it also does not reward. It does not inspire. It does not endure. Average is the slow death chosen by the many, while greatness is the hard road taken by the few. Why most people never succeed, why most people never succeed. This is the bitter truth that so many avoid because it exposes not the cruelty of fate, but the weakness of human will. People believe success is denied to them by chance, by bad luck by the unfairness of life. But in reality, most people never succeed because they lack the discipline, the vision, and the relentless hunger required to force the world to bend. Success is not a gift. It is a conquest, and conquest is not won by the hesitant or the passive. It is won by those who are willing to do what others fear, to sacrifice what others protect, to seize what others wait for. The masses will never succeed because they confuse wishing with working, and they confuse activity with progress. Look at the way most people live. They spend their days in motion, but not in direction. They work long hours, they follow routines, they stay busy, but their busyness hides their lack of strategy. They mistake effort for achievement, believing that as long as they are tired at the end of the day, they must be moving forward. But a man can run endlessly in circles and never leave the same spot. The masses never succeed because they confuse movement with advancement. They exhaust themselves without purpose and then wonder why they remain trapped where they began. They also fail because they lack vision. Success demands clarity. It demands knowing exactly what you want, exactly what you must do, and exactly what you must sacrifice to achieve it. But most people do not know what they want. They claim they want success, but what does that mean? They cannot define it. They cannot see it. They cannot map the path to it. They live with vague desires and blurred goals. And so they drift wherever the current of life takes them. A man without vision is like a ship without a destination. The winds of fortune push him endlessly, but he never arrives anywhere. Success is not given to such men because they have not defined a throne to seize. And what of discipline? This is where the majority collapse completely. Success demands repetition, endurance, and a ruthless consistency that most people cannot tolerate. They want quick results. They want easy victories. They want the crown without the scars. The moment success demands suffering, they retreat. They start projects with passion, but abandon them at the first obstacle. They set goals with excitement, but surrender when they feel resistance. Their lives are a collection of half-built bridges, each abandoned before reaching the other side. Success never comes to such men because success requires patience, persistence, and the will to push through failure after failure without breaking. Machiavelli understood the nature of fortune. He wrote that fortune favors the bold, the daring, those who are willing to seize her with aggression. But most people are timid. They wait for opportunity as if it were a guest that will politely knock on their door. They wait for the perfect time, the perfect conditions, the perfect chance. They wait until they are ready, but readiness never comes, and so they wait until life passes them by. Opportunity does not knock, it must be taken, and the world does not wait for the hesitant. The masses never succeed because they are slaves to hesitation. Even when opportunities do appear, most people sabotage themselves with fear. They ask, what if I fail? What if I lose? What if I embarrass myself? They see only the risk, never the reward. They retreat into safety, convincing themselves that caution is wisdom. But what they call wisdom is nothing more than disguised cowardice. Those who succeed embrace risk because they understand that without it, there is no power, no progress, no throne to claim. Those who fear risk stay trapped in mediocrity, watching from the sidelines as the bold write history. The truth is most people never succeed because they do not truly want success. They want the idea of success, the comfort of imagining themselves powerful, respected, admired. But they do not want the price. They do not want the sleepless nights, the failures, the sacrifices, the isolation. They admire greatness from afar but do not dare to walk the path that greatness demands. They say they want to rule, but they do not want to fight the battles required of rulers. They say they want wealth, but they do not want to take the risk required to create it. They say they want freedom, but they do not want the responsibility that comes with it. And so they never succeed, because desire without sacrifice is nothing but a fantasy. Most people never succeed because they are not willing to command their own destiny. They live as followers, waiting for instructions, seeking approval, asking permission. They are comfortable being told what to do, comfortable being directed, comfortable being ruled. But success belongs only to those who dare to rule themselves, who impose order upon their own lives, who do not wait for permission but take what is theirs by force. The masses will always fail because they would rather be comfortable slaves than uncomfortable kings. Why most people are weak, and how to gain power. Why most people are weak, and how to gain power. Weakness is not simply a lack of strength in the body. It is the disease of the spirit, the surrender of the will, the quiet acceptance of chains disguised as comfort. Weakness is dependence. Weakness is hesitation. Weakness is the desperate hunger to be accepted, even at the cost of your own dignity. And this is why most people remain powerless. Because they would rather be liked than respected, they would rather feel safe than be free, they would rather submit quietly than rise with risk. Weakness is the condition of the majority because the majority is unwilling to endure the price of true strength. Most people are weak because they cannot stand alone. They rely on approval, on guidance, on validation, always looking outward instead of inward. They measure their worth by the opinions of others, by the applause they receive, by the recognition they crave. And so their lives are dictated by the crowd, enslaved to shifting moods and shallow judgments. The weak man cannot say no for fear of being disliked. He cannot stand apart for fear of being mocked. He cannot choose for himself for fear of being wrong. His life is a chain of compromises, and compromise is the soil in which weakness grows. Dependence breeds weakness. The man who cannot survive without the help of others, without the security of a system, without the comfort of routine, is always at the mercy of those who can take these things away. He bows his head to his employer, to his government, to his leaders, not out of loyalty, but out of necessity. And those who depend are easily controlled, for power belongs to those who can provide or withhold what others need. The weak man will never gain power because he cannot exist without leaning on someone stronger. But weakness is not only dependence, it is also the fear of power itself. Most people shy away from authority, responsibility, and influence because these things carry weight. To hold power means to be targeted, to be judged, to be envied, to be hated. And most would rather remain small than endure the fire of scrutiny. They tell themselves they are humble, but in truth, they are afraid. They hide behind humility to mask their lack of courage, calling their weakness a virtue. Yet humility without strength is not virtue, it is submission, and submission never leads to power. How does one gain power? Not through begging, not through waiting, not through wishing, but through the deliberate cultivation of strength. Power begins in the mind. It is the ability to think independently, to resist the illusions of the crowd, to judge reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. The powerful man sees the world without distortion, while the weak man blinds himself with hope. Excuses. To gain power, you must first strip yourself of illusions, because illusion is the opiate of the weak. Next, power requires mastery of discipline. Weakness thrives in indulgence, in laziness, in the inability to command oneself. The man who cannot command himself cannot command anyone else. He who cannot rise when tired, who cannot work when bored, who cannot focus when distracted, will forever remain weak, because his own body and mind refuse his orders. Power belongs to those who master themselves first, and from this mastery, they extend their dominion outward. But perhaps the greatest secret of power lies in duality, the ability to wear masks. Most people are weak because they are predictable, because they wear their hearts on their sleeves, because they mistake honesty for strategy. They believe they must always speak their mind, always reveal their intentions, always act from the purity of their feelings. This is foolishness. Power requires disguise, the art of appearing virtuous while acting with calculation. The fox and the lion, cunning and strength together, this is the formula of power. The weak do not understand this, and so they expose themselves, becoming prey for those who master deception. Weakness is also born from attachment. People cling to comfort, to possessions, to relationships, to routines, believing these things give them stability. But attachment enslaves. The man who cannot walk away, who cannot lose, who cannot risk, is chained to what he fears to lose. Power requires detachment, the ability to let go when necessary, the strength to sacrifice when demanded. Only the detached can make ruthless decisions, and only ruthless decisions secure lasting power. Most people are weak because they avoid conflict. They fear confrontation. They avoid struggle, they shrink from battle. They believe peace will protect them, but peace without strength is simply surrender under another name. Power does not avoid conflict, It controls it, manipulates it, and wins it. Those who fear conflict remain weak because they leave victory in hands of others. Weakness is the natural state of the crowd. They depend, they hesitate, they obey. They cling to illusions, they worship comfort, they bow to fear. Power, however, belongs to the few who train themselves to resist these traps. To gain power, one must be willing to endure solitude, to embrace conflict, to master disguise, to command oneself with discipline, and to shed the illusions that comfort the masses but enslave them. So now you understand the reasons why the many are condemned to fail. The good suffer because they mistake virtue for strength. The average remain trapped because they fear the risk that greatness demands. The majority never succeed because they lack vision, discipline, and the courage to seize fortune. And the weak surrender their freedom because they depend on others, because they cannot command themselves, and because they refuse to master the duality of power. These truths are not gentle, nor are they comforting, but they are real. The world does not reward innocence, nor does it honor mediocrity, nor does it grant success to the hesitant, nor does it respect the weak. It bends only to those who dare to shape it with boldness, cunning, and strength. If you would rise above the masses, you must abandon illusions. Do not seek pity, seek power. Do not cling to safety, embrace risk. Do not wait for fortune, seize her. Do not worship weakness, cultivate strength. For the fate of the many is to obey, but the destiny of the few is to rule.